Hey guys, welcome back, and today we're going to go over the Magicka Warden. The Magicka Warden is in a fantastic spot right now, perhaps the best spot that it's ever been in, and we're putting it together in a way that's really fun. It leans into its ice identity, that frost mage feeling, and it's got fantastic AoE damage. It's one of the best solo classes in the game right now. It's one of the hardest hitting classes in the game, period, whether it's for solo or group content. So let's dive into why the Frost Warden is so amazing right now. First up, for the race, you can go High Elf for the most DPS possible. You can also go Dark Elf. They're very good, well-rounded class, which allows you to go Stamina later, but High Elf is going to be the most performance. Breton is also a fantastic choice, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of soloing. Breton has amazing sustain. They're always going to be a really nice choice for solo content. As for the Mundus, while we're soloing, we're going to use Lover Mundus. You jump into group content, then go ahead and slot Thief Mundus. Like if you're going to do a dungeon, it's fine. You don't need to change it. But if you ever start doing raids and stuff like that, you're going to want to put on that Thief Mundus, take off the Ring of the Pale Order. As for the attributes, we're going to use all 64 points in Magicka. The more Magicka you have, the more damage you do. So we want to really pump that up. As for the food, I'm going to recommend Ghastly Eyeball. Ghastly Eyeball is going to be perfect. It's going to give you 5,000 Magicka, and it's also going to give you 500 Magicka regen, thereabouts, right? Which means you have a ton more Magicka, which means you're doing more damage with every cast, and it's also taking you a lot longer to run out of Magicka. And actually, in the content that I was testing this in, I was not able to run out of my resources. This was a really well-balanced build. It really felt good this time around. As for our consumables, you've got two types of potions that you could use. One is Essence of Magicka. That's the cheap potion. You can either buy it at guild traders for next to nothing, or you can find it on mobs when you kill them. It's just Essence of Magicka potion. It's just going to give you some Magicka and a little bit of sustain, and they don't last very long, but they're perfectly fine for overland content, and they're great for getting in the habit of using your potion every time it's off cooldown. That's going to be very important at getting good at ESO, is using that potion anytime that you're in combat. Next potion that you can use is the Essence of Spell Power potion. This is also a really important potion. This one gives you major sorcery though, and it's going to increase your spell damage by 20%. That's a massive buff, right? So don't underestimate this potion whenever you're doing something hard. These buffs that it gives you are substantial. So if you're going into veteran content, if you're going into a solo arena, right, anywhere where you feel like you need to try, go ahead and pop these things on. They are expensive, so use them sparingly when it comes to like easy content, but like later when you get experience of the game, you'll almost always have these things going. The next buff that these give you is Major Prophecy. That's going to increase your crit chance. Next, we have Restore Magicka immediately and Major Intellect, which increases our recovery by 30%. All right, next up, let's go over the armor for the Frost Warden. The Frost Warden is definitely leaning into that frost damage lifestyle. We are leaning into ice. Anywhere we can grab ice, we are taking it on our gear, on our weapons, and even in our abilities, and we're being rewarded for it right now. So our monster set that we're going to be using is going to be our Ice Heart Skies. Ice Heart is fantastic for a few reasons. One, it's got a really solid one-piece bonus. That one-piece bonus is giving you crit chance, which is going to be great for your damage. Two-piece bonus is giving you a AoE explosion of ice damage that radiates from you, doing damage to all of your enemies. And it's also going to apply a shield to you that absorbs 5,000 damage for 6 seconds. And you can proc this every 6 seconds. It's simultaneously very defensive and very offensive. And because of that one piece stat, it's actually really good for our damage as well. On the body, we're going to grab Frostbite, and this is a really easy to grab overland set if you want to just go farm it yourself, or you could go ahead and pick this up at a guild trader. If you're not sure where to find any of this gear, as always, look at the written guide link down in the description below. You just hover over the set and it tells you exactly where to go to get it. Frostbite is great because it's going to amplify all of the frost damage that we're doing, and we're doing a ton of it. And if you're willing to get into trials, then you can go ahead and at some point replace Frostbite with Whirl of the Depths, which also does frost damage. We're going to pair with that the two-piece set. This is kind of a unique setup for the Warden because we want to use a Master's Weapon on the front bar and we want to use a Maelstrom Weapon on the back bar. So we're using two arena weapons, and arena weapons are really fun in ESO because they can do big things for your damage, especially when it pertains to one specific skill. We're going to take advantage of that on this character because the Master's Eye Staff just pairs so well with this class. So we don't have room for a full 5-piece set to pair with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the Master's Eye Staff on the front bar, Ring of the Pale Order on one piece of jewelry, and then the 2-piece Assassin's Guile. Assassin's Guile is a set that gives you crit chance for your 2-piece bonus. And you can take any set that gives you crit chance for your 2-piece bonus. So if you don't have Assassin's Guile, you could use False Gods. You could use any set that gives crit chance as the 2-piece bonus. It doesn't matter which one you pick. Assassin's Guile is just the easiest one to make yourself. It's a 3-trait set. So if you've done any research at all, you can almost certainly craft it yourself or get to the point where you can very easily, or you could just buy it off a guild trader for very very cheap. So you'd want to wear on your jewelry 2 pieces of Assassin's Guile or any set that has crit chance as the 2-piece bonus. Like we mentioned, Master's Ice Staff on the front bar, because we'll get into it with the passives for the class. Frost Wardens are really amped up by using ice staves. We'll talk about why in a bit. And then on the back bar, we're going to use the Maelstrom Ice Staff. So you've got Ice Staff on the front bar, Ice Staff on the back bar, and Wardens are really rewarded for doing this right now. All right, now let's dive into the skills. First skill we're going to be using is called Deep Fissure. This skill is our semi-spammable on the Warden. This is one that you always want to prioritize. You want to make sure this is going off anytime that you can. And it's kind of a unique ability. It's doing a few things for us. One, it's on our bar, and it's got great bar buffing passives from our class. When we get into the passives for the class, you'll understand why we want as many of these animal companion abilities on the front bar as possible. There's a passive in there that's amplifying our damage greatly for each one of these that's slotted. So we really are rewarded for using class abilities on the Warden right now. The way this ability works is you fire it off, and then 3 seconds later, you get an explosion in a line in front of you that damages all enemies in a line in front of you. And then 6 seconds later, again, without having to press it again, 6 seconds later still, you get another explosion where they resurface doing even more damage. So it's 2 explosions, one after 3 seconds, and then 6 seconds after that. So a total of 9 seconds for this ability to fire off both explosions. This ability is also going to apply 2 debuffs to the enemy. One debuff is going to be Major Breach, and the other is Minor Breach. So you're getting almost 6,000 reduction in their resistances plus 3,000 for a total of nearly 9,000.
It's over 9,000! 9,000? There's no way that can be right!
Reduction in enemy resistances. So like just this one ability alone almost gives you all the penetration that you need. You stack with this light armor, or you stack with this lover Mundus, and you've got more pen than you need. All right, the second ability on the front bar is going to be Screaming Cliff Racer. This ability is kind of interesting. When we hit the enemy with this ability, it's going to give us a 10-second buff that gives us 100 extra spell damage and weapon damage. And if the enemy's off balance when we hit them with this ability, it gives us 4 times that. It quadruples that buff to 400 weapon and spell damage. So we're going to use this once every 10 seconds or so as a bit of a self buff / direct damage ability. Next ability on our front bar is going to be Frost Reach. This is going to be our spammable. We devastate the enemy with an enhanced charge from our staff, dealing 7,400 frost damage and an additional dot over 20 seconds. Enemies hit by this are afflicted with the chilled effect. Now, because we're using the Master's Ice Staff, this ability is being changed a bit by this weapon. It says it reduces the cost of this by 10%, making it easier to use as a spammable. And it also causes this ability to give us a 600 weapon and spell damage buff for 4 seconds after we activate it. So every time we use this ability, we are going to get a 600 weapon and spell damage buff for 4 seconds. That's why we want to use it frequently. That's why we want to use it as our spammable. That is a massive, massive buff to our damage output. So definitely use it. Definitely take advantage of using Frost Reach as a spammable since we are using the Ice Staff. Next, we have Barb Trap. Barb Trap, if you've watched one of my builds before, you know how effective this skill is right now. Not only is it one of the hardest hitting single target dots in the game, it also comes with some great passives. It gives your character minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10%. Then you've got your fighter skill passives, which increase your weapon and spell damage, which increase your ult regen. Tons of great passives just for slotting this, even when you're not even using it, that are all good for your damage. Plus, one of the hardest hitting dots. You should always have at least one fighter skill ability on your front bar, really. And next we have Bird of Prey. Bird of Prey is one of my favorite abilities in the game. It just feels good to use. It increases your move speed by 30% for 6 seconds. And then when you don't need the move speed, it's constantly giving you a minor berserk, which increases your damage by 5%. This is a really fun ability to use in solo play. And when you're in a group, you can just replace this with any dot that you really like to use. But for solo play, it feels really good. And it works as simplifying your rotation because it's a skill you don't have to manage in battle. You can just not press it and you're still doing more damage by having it slotted. Plus, again, we're getting another buff from the Animal Companion line because we're getting rewarded for each skill we use from that line. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. So we're getting majorly buffed. I'll talk about that very soon. Wild Guardian for our ultimate. The bear is just a fantastic ultimate. He does a lot of damage. He does way more damage than he looks like he's doing over there while he's slapping the enemies. And he also serves to deal execute damage. He deals double damage to enemies below 25% health. So when the enemy gets low on health, if you're fighting a boss or an ad or whatever, once they get below 25%, he really starts crushing them. He has a chance to knock them down and stun them. He's just really, really effective at doing a ton of damage. Plus, he's from our Animal Companion line, So we are getting further buff. Our damage is amplified because we're using another animal companion ability. Now, the first ability on the back bar, we're going to be using Unstable Wall of Elements. Now, this is going to turn into Unstable Wall of Frost because we have a Frost Staff equipped. And what this is going to do is it's going to create an icy barrier, dealing 888 frost damage to enemies in the area every second, and applying Unstable Frost Shield for 6 seconds on you and nearby allies that absorbs up to 5,000 damage from projectiles. So it's another shield that we're getting, right? We've got our Ice Heart giving us a shield. We've got our Frost Wall giving us another shield. And while this effect is on the floor, it's also doing damage to the enemies. And then it explodes when it expires, doing even more damage, and applies Unstable Frost Shield to you for 6 seconds, and then absorbs another 2,300 damage from projectiles. So as you can see, this ability is doing a lot. It's doing damage to the enemies that are near you, and it's also absorbing damage from projectiles that are flung at you. And as you can tell, it's another frost ability. Just remember, we're using all these frost abilities. That's going to be important in a bit when we talk about passives. So make sure to listen to the passive section of this video because it's especially important when it comes to putting together a Frost Warden. Next, we have the Fetcher Infection. This is an animal companion ability. So again, we're rewarded for using it because we've got a passive in that line that says, hey, every time you use one of these abilities, all of your damage gets amplified. This ability is great because not only is it a fantastic dot to the enemies, it also is going to apply minor vulnerability to them, increasing the damage they take by 5%, which is just another way of saying it increases our damage by 5%, right? But it's not just our damage, it's everybody that's attacking it. So this is a great ability to use when you're in a group, especially if there's no other wardens casting it. For the middle ability on the back bar, this is kind of a flex spot. You could put a shield here like Harness Magicka if you feel like you need a shield. I didn't because of one of the abilities that we have later that we're going to talk about in a second that's kind of unique to this class. And I love that I didn't feel like I needed Harness Magicka on this build because I always feel like I need that on every DPS. Every mag DPS, I always need a slot of shield. This one, I really didn't, not even in solo content, which felt great. So Consuming Trap is fantastic because it's a great single target dot. And also when the enemy dies that you apply this to, it gives you a ton of resources back. It's going to give you 5,000 Magicka. It's going to give you 3,700 health and 2,400 stamina, right? It's enough to pretty much solve any sustain problem that you might be having in battle. You just make sure you put this on an enemy before it dies. And you're going to get so much resources back so often that you won't ever have to worry about running out of resources really on this build. Next, we have Winter's Revenge, another frost damage ability. This conjures icy shards at the location that you cast it, doing damage to the enemy. This damage increases by 30% if cast with a destruction staff equipped. We are wearing a destruction staff, so it's doing 30% more damage. And the ability has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. Remember that word, that's important. It's doing a ton of damage for us. Next, we have Arctic Blast. Arctic Blast is a fantastic ability. It's my favorite ability on this class right now because it's doing good damage and it's applying chilled, which is important, and it heals you. So anytime you need health back, boom, you pop this ability off and it's going to give you a massive 8,000 health heal. And it is a damage dealing ability. That's a dot that lasts 20 seconds. These winds persist for 20 seconds and chill your foes to the bone, stunning them immediately for 3 seconds upon activation. So it stuns enemies. You'll literally see them frozen in place, unable to attack you upon activation. And then it deals 1,285 frost damage every other second. The damage has a higher chance to apply the chilled status effect. Boom, another chilled status effect, right? That's great. And then we have to double bar the bear. If you're wearing the bear on the front, you got to wear it on the back in the ult slot. Otherwise, it'll unsummon every time you switch away from that bar. So we do have to double bar the bear. It's an animal companion skill. So again, we're getting to take advantage of these passives we're about to talk about right now. So let's talk about those passives I kept kind of hinting at because they're especially important on this class. It's really important. Okay, so first passive is going to be from the animal companion skill line is Bond with Nature. Anytime one of your companion abilities ends, you get 1,285 health back. Cool. It's just a nice little heal every time one of these abilities ends. We've got like 5 of them slotted. You know, we've constantly got one ending. We're always getting that little drip feed of health. It's not a massive thing, but it's, you know, every little bit helps. The next passive is Savage Beast. When you cast an animal companion ability while you are in combat, you generate 4 ultimate. This effect can occur every 8 seconds. So you're going to get your ult back pretty fast. You're always going to be casting this every 8 seconds because you do have 4 or 5 of these abilities on your bar. You're going to constantly be proccing this with those abilities. This is enough. You know, these are all reasons why we want to use as many of these abilities as possible. Flourish. Increase your mag and stam recovery by 12% if an animal companion ability is slotted. We do have an animal companion ability slotted on both bars, so we always have this 12% increased regen of our mag and our stam. Great, because we are pulling from both resource pools. Next up, we have advanced species. This is a big one. It increases our critical damage by 4% for each animal companion ability slotted, giving us a total of 16% increased critical damage on the front bar. That is huge. We are almost forced to wear Barb Trap for the minor force that it gives us. And that's only giving us 10% crit chance, and every class takes 10% crit chance. They can't pass it up, right? We're getting 16 on top of that just for free, just because we're using these abilities from this line. That is huge. So when we do crit, it's hitting that much harder, which is another reason why that crit chance line on our Ice Heart feels so good, because when we do crit, we hit so hard. Next, we have the green balance skill line. We really ignore all of the passives in this line, except for the last one. When you activate a heal on yourself or an ally, you grant them minor toughness. So this is going to increase your max health by 10% for 20 seconds every time you heal yourself. Guess what? You heal yourself every time you use your Arctic Blast, and it lasts 20 seconds. You get 100% uptime on minor toughness, which means you always have 10% more health. It's very good for, you know, keeping you alive, making you thicker. 10% extra health is a lot in ESO, because we just barely meet the threshold to surviving one-shots and stuff like that. Well, with another 10%, now you've got a lot of wiggle room that a lot of classes don't have access to. Winter's Embrace, this passive line, this one's big, okay? So first, Glacial Presence, increase chance of applying chilled on enemies with Winter's Embrace abilities by 200%, and then increase the damage of your chilled status effect by 959. This scales off your highest offensive stat. So our chilled status effect is doing a ton of damage now, right? And we are always applying chilled, and this is going to amount to a very substantial amount of damage for our character. Next, we have Frozen Armor. Increase your physical and spell resistance by 990 for each Winter's Embrace ability slotted. On the front bar, we don't have one, and then on the back bar, we've got two. So on the back bar, we're a little bit tankier than we are on the front bar. We've got almost 2,000 extra resistance back there. Reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 15% from Icy Aura. We always get this because we grab the passive. That feels great. And then finally, Piercing Cold. Increase your damage done by 2%, which increases to 12% when using an Ice Staff. So this is why we were using those Ice Staves. We've got one on the front bar, one on the back bar, and that's because we get 12% increased damage just for using an Ice Staff. That's huge, man. We are going to definitely take advantage of that 12% damage bonus for using an Ice Staff. So the Frost Warden really starting to feel like a Frost Warden in ESO. You love to see it, and it feels good, and it's a lot of fun to play. Man, I can't recommend it enough right now. The next set of passives we're going to grab are going to be all of our Destruction Staff passives, right? Because we are using two Destruction Staffs, an Ice Staff on the front and an Ice Staff on the back bar. We are going to grab all the Light Armor passives because we are using a bunch of Light Armor. You can go ahead and grab Medium or Heavy if you're wearing any medium or heavy armor for some reason. You can go ahead and grab those passives. They are very effective in this game. We're going to grab the first 4 Fighters Guild passives because they're going to do things like increase the damage of your Fighters Guild abilities, your Barb Trap. It's going to give you increased weapon and spell damage for having an ability slotted from this guild, which we do. It's going to give you increased ult regen for having an ability slotted, which we do. And it's going to increase the damage of your Fighter's Guild ability itself. It's great, right? So first 4 passives here. Grab them. Then Undaunted, we're going to grab both passives here. This is going to increase the amount of resources you get back every time you grab a synergy. That's pretty much what synergies are for in ESO, is you grab them, you get resources back because of the Undaunted passives. The other thing that synergies are good for is occasionally there will be a buff associated with that synergy. So sometimes there'll be a damage buff, like 10% increased damage for 6 seconds after you grab a synergy. Depending on the synergy, it might have a different buff. But the one constant is that you always get resources back for grabbing one. And that's why it's so important in group content to be constantly like grabbing those synergies as they float by you from one of your healers. Under the assault skill line, we're going to grab continuous attack. This is a permanent 30% increase to your move speed on your mount all the time. Every character that you ever make should always grab this ability. It's really easy to get. Go to Cyrodiil, not to PvP, just do the PvE quest in there. It takes maybe 5 minutes. That's the zone story. And by the time you're done with it, you are level 3 in assault, and you can grab this passive. It does unlock at level 3. So you have to get to level 3. If you accidentally skip the ballista training, you won't get to 3. You'll be at like 2.5, and you'll have to go do 1 battleground. No big deal. Go just queue up for it, rip off the band-aid, boom, you're level 3, and you can grab this passive, and then you get to move 30% faster on your mount forever. I can't explain how worth it that is. That's a big deal. Next, we have racial passives. Grab all of your racial passives, regardless of which race you picked. Those are big. And then finally, last but definitely not least, grab medicinal use under the alchemy skill line. Medicinal use will make your potions last as long as the potion cooldown. And potions in this game are huge, right? They're giving you 20% increased damage. They're giving you extra crit chance. They are really, really, really important, and you should be using them the second they come off cooldown. So they have a 45-second cooldown, which means every 45 seconds, you should be using your potion. That's how ESO is designed. And if you're not doing that, you're operating at a fraction of the power that you could be. These are a very big deal in the game, and they're very important for your sustain and your damage. So definitely use them. And so this passive, like I said, by default, a good potion will last 35 seconds. The buffs that you get, it will last 35 seconds roughly, which means that 20% increase weapon and spell damage you get from it only lasts 35 seconds. Unless you go ahead and get this passive, then that makes it last 47 seconds, giving you 100% uptime instead of 75% uptime on your potion buffs. Really big for your damage. That's it for the passives. All right, as for the rotation for this build, what we're going to be doing is we're going to get all of our dots up like normal. So you're going to go to your back bar, you're going to lay down all your dots pretty much if you want to. You can start off with Deep Fissure and get that countdown kind of going as you run up to the enemy. You can even launch a Screaming Cliff Racer at him from a distance to proc that off balance and get, you know, quadruple the effect if you're far from the enemy. But yeah, you can start off with Deep Fissure, get that clock ticking down that first 3 seconds before that explosion, and then go to your back bar and start lacing all of your dots on the enemy. Get your Unstable Wall, your Fetcher, your Consuming Trap, your Winter's Revenge, and your Arctic Blast. Get them all going. Get all of those dots going. Come back to the front bar, right? This has already exploded once at that point, your Deep Fissure, and it's doing the 6-second countdown to the second explosion, which is going to be just enough time for you to get the front bar going. You're going to get your Barb Trap, and you're going to get your Frost Reach out. Now, around this time, your fissure will have exploded twice, and so you can go ahead and recast it after that second explosion. At this point, you kind of switch to a dynamic rotation. You're just going to be casting any dot that falls off when it falls off, or any buff when it falls off. And anytime everything else is ticking, you're going to be using your Frost Reach as your spammable. The hardest thing to make sure you're doing is keeping this Deep Fissure going, because it is doing a lot for you and it does a lot of damage, right? And it's got this awkward like 9-second countdown where it's 3 seconds and then 6 seconds. And you just want to make sure you don't recast it early, because if you do, then you are losing that second 12,000 damage explosion. So try to keep an eye on your fissure explosions, make sure it explodes twice, and then as soon as it does, recast it. And anytime everything else is going, you're casting your Frost Reach as your spam mode. And next, for the champion points, we're going to go ahead and send you to the website. I have a long list of champion points there and the order that you spec into them. It's so much easier to read than me just sitting here and reading them out to you, and the number and the value for all, like, you know, there's a ton of them. Spoiler. So check out the website and follow the champion point guide down at the bottom of the build there. And really take advantage of that build guide. We put a lot of work into them. Also, I stream on Twitch. Be sure to swing by my Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/luckyghost. You'll find me streaming ESO as well as like a host of other MMOs. I'm an MMO degenerate. I love these things. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. And if you enjoy my content and you want to support me, make sure to click the link to become a YouTube member, and you get perks like access to a private Discord channel for my YouTube members and my Twitch subscribers. And you guys can just ask me anything you want there. Take advantage of that if you want to, you know, by clicking the link down in the description below to become a YouTube member. And I think that's everything for this build. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave a comment down below. Also check the website. The answer's probably there, but I'm happy to answer it either way. See you in the next video. Take care.